moment to start the YouTube, please, Madam Chair. I'm going to
Oh,
sign
yeah,
off.
yeah. Okay.
We're good to go.
Thank you. Okay. I am opening the meeting. This is the September 4th, 2024 Land Use and Zoning Committee meeting. My name is I have to do it again. Okay. I want to welcome everyone back to the Land Use and Zoning Committee, this meeting. This is September 4th. We are recording this meeting, and so it will be available for you to review on the next day. Let me see what other things I wanted to cover. I don't think I have anything else. I'm just so glad to see all of you back again. It's been a long time, but it has not been as quiet as I thought it would be. I've been catching up. I don't know. I guess there haven't been any meetings, but it's still very busy. We have a lot of ULURPs that have come in over the last couple months. And also there has been some work being done on the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan, which Colin is here tonight to discuss. Colin is from City Planning. Let's see. So the first item on the agenda, where's my agenda? Is Colin and the Long Island City Neighborhood Study, who's going to give us a review of what's been happening so far on that. You want to take it away?
Happy to. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you again. Hope you enjoyed the summer break. Feels like we're back to school. Happy to give, I already gave a version of this presentation to Liz and Jerry and Andreas and Evie. I'm going to try and give an abridged version just to be cognizant of the time that you all have today. But I just wanted to give you some updates on where we are today with the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan, and let you know how you can continue to be engaged as we kind of move towards that ULURP clock that will start ticking early next year. Florence, would you mind giving me sharing privileges?
Yes.
Okay, I hope everybody sees me in presentation mode. So for those of you who haven't been able to join us for our events yet, just give a very quick overview of the background of the study. Long Island City is a very transit-rich neighborhood with a very mixed-use character to it as well, and a very diverse economy. Within the last 10 years or so, we've seen a really large increase in population, adding over 20,000 new housing units, essentially creating and expanding an existing neighborhood. Through this study, we think there's a really great opportunity for diverse job growth and workforce development as well, though. The reason why we're looking at a neighborhood study here, or neighborhood plan, there's a few reasons, but I'll just try and outline them here on this slide in terms of land use and zoning. Firstly, M14 is a district that covers a large majority of this study area, and it's generally considered to be a district that limits business growth and expansion. It has a 2 FAR and is restricted to manufacturing and commercial uses. I'll just point out that the portions of the study area that are outside of, or that are within Community District 1 are zoned M15 and M13. These are both slightly more intense districts. They permit a FAR of 5, but still those same use groups, manufacturing and commercial. And M13 does also have a generally onerous parking requirement. Outside of Community District 1, we have a waterfront access plan that exists from the 90s along the waterfront within our study area. that is generally considered to be outdated to not our modern requirements. It's been 30 years. And the zoning that we have along the waterfront generally constrains redevelopment. And as you may know, waterfront access plan is only triggered when there is redevelopment on a site. So let's say someone wants to redevelop their property, they would have to provide public access to the waterfront via esplanades and connections to the upland areas. And lastly, and maybe most critically, while we're living in a housing crisis, there is no mandatory inclusionary housing throughout Long Island City. There is one half of a block along Crescent Street in Community District 1, which is a project from maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, which the board may remember. And that is the only MIH area. So there is no mandate to include affordable housing within Long Island City. So with that being said, we kicked off our engagement in November of last year and have continued through June of this year, culminating our final town hall. Thank you everybody for coming out, by the way, if you were there. It was great to see a lot of familiar faces. We anticipate doing some more engagement in the fall, and I'll have some more details to share out with you all in the coming weeks, hopefully. As I said, we ended our town hall in June, which culminated in a release of our zoning framework, along with draft strategies that we intend to look into more in the next couple of months and try and implement some great investments into this neighborhood. We have 7 shared goals. I won't read them all out. They're a little lengthy, but I can leave a link to our study website, which outlines them and kind of shows you where we are to date. In terms of our timeline, as I mentioned, we kicked off engagement in November, and now we've gotten to just past our scoping hearing. Scoping is the point in which we declare the scope of work that we're planning to analyze for environmental purposes. And we have a scoping hearing public comment period that goes until September 13th. So until that time, we are receiving comments on the draft scope of our work, and we'll be incorporating those comments into our next iteration. And so for these next several months leading up to certification, we'll be doing a lot of that back of house work to understand what kind of environmental impacts the zoning that we're proposing here would have on the neighborhood. Along with all of the technical and city planning and land use sort of aspects to it, we're also concurrently working on those draft strategies I mentioned and some investments in policies, capital projects, programs, services. And we anticipate to have that kind of wrapped up into a package and completed by the same time that we approve this new zoning in fall of 2025. I'll back up and just say that we're intending to certify this project in the spring of 2025, but you understand how the ULURP clock works. It'll take us until about fall to get this the zoning like fully incorporated into our zoning maps. So I'll give you also a look at kind of our proposed land use actions, our scope of work, as I mentioned earlier, the things that we're looking to get some comments on. So just to outline some of the goals for the zoning framework, firstly, we're looking to increase density and allow housing in key areas. This means mapping mandatory inclusionary housing wherever possible and leveraging opportunity sites near transit and along the waterfront. We're looking to encourage a mixed use environment, something that we see all around Long Island City, and it's been a really successful model to date. We're looking at leveraging our city-owned property to advance a lot of the goals we've been hearing from folks within the neighborhood. And then we're also looking to create open space opportunities. I think our best opportunity through zoning is through that waterfront access plan. And we see this as an opportunity to bring between 7 and 9 acres of open space along the waterfront. Within our industrial business zones, our IBZs, we really want to strengthen the economic vitality of those light industrial districts and focus on our workforce development. We want to encourage active, diverse, and dynamic corridors, such as 44th Drive and Vernon Boulevard and 21st Street, and really enhancing the character of those neighborhoods and those corridors. And of course, lastly, we also want to be responsive to the surrounding context, whether that be Hunters Point to the south or Dutch Kills to the east. So here's a high-level look at our draft zoning proposal. I'll try and give a quick glaze over of it, and I'm happy to go back to discuss it more. In the purples, you'll see our industrial districts or manufacturing M districts. Within them, only commercial and manufacturing uses would be permitted. They are within the bounds of the IBZ. These would be increasing densities across the board. I'll just call out in the lighter pink color in the center, the M23A is one of those, or I'll back up one more second just to mention that all of these new M districts are districts that were approved through zoning for economic opportunity. And so the board had a quick look at what those might look like back in the fall of last year. And so they encourage more loft-like buildings as opposed to kind of the more squatter industrial buildings that we generally consider to be restrictive in redevelopment. I'll just note that the M23A has a preference for industrial uses. So there is an extra 1 FAR bump if there is industrial uses included, as opposed to just being fully commercial. Where you see red, orange, and yellow are all mixed use districts, which means that a variety of uses are permitted. Residential, commercial, manufacturing, community facility, you name it. The darker colors indicate increased intensity. So you see that near the core of Long Island City and also along the waterfront. And then as we get closer down to 44th Drive, going down to Hunters Point, we see those oranges and yellows as we try to transition down into that neighborhood there. So I realize that you are all representing Community District 1, so I'll just give a closer look at what those districts in CD1 look like. Starting in the south, M16A R10 is a district that permits an 8.5 FAR for commercial and manufacturing uses, and R10 permits up to 12 FAR residential uses. If you may remember, a mixed-use district permits the highest FAR between all of these districts. But let's say, theoretically, you want to build a 12 FAR building. You only have 8.5 FAR for manufacturing or commercial. Once you've maxed that out, the remaining FAR needs to be residential. To the left is the M15A district, where there's currently a 5 FAR district. We are proposing a 6.5 FAR district, and then the M14A would be a 5 FAR district, remaining the same amount of intensity, but different controls in terms of bulk. And we intend to kind of have that be a transition down as we get closer towards Dutch Kills. All right, almost done. Thank you for bearing with me. As we're doing scoping, we have to look at the numbers and see what kind of what is being generated through these zoning districts. So RWCDS stands for reasonable worst case development scenario. We are trying to look at the outer envelope of what could be created under this project. So reasonable worst case is a little bit of a boogeyman to describe how much development we think could reasonably occur at the higher end. So we're looking at a 10-year framework here. Under a no action, or when no changes to the zoning districts occur, we're seeing existing conditions generally remaining, with some residential redevelopment around 2,000 units and an increase in office and retail and a decrease in industrial uses following some nationwide trends that we're also experiencing in the city. Under our with action scenario, in which we analyze all those actions I outlined earlier, we're seeing a lot more residential and mixed use developments and non-residential in M districts. This with action was analyzed under 2 different scenarios based on a public site rehab, for that being a rehab of the DOE building at the intersection of 44th Drive and Vernon Boulevard, or a partial demolition of that building and a residential construction on that demolished area. In total, we have 50 projected sites, 50 sites we believe would be redeveloped in 10 years, and 15 potential sites, ones that we're less confident would be redeveloped in that time frame. So this is all like written out in our draft scope of work, which I can also link you all to. The increment in added units is somewhere between 13,600 to 14,000 based on those 2 scenarios I laid out, which equals about 4,000 MIH units. at option 1. This includes an increase of 3 million square feet of commercial uses, be that a mix of retail, office, and life science, about 340,000 square feet of community facility space, and following, again, these trends, we're seeing a continued decrease in industrial space. And so that's where I'll leave the presentation for now. I'm happy to pull up slides if there's any questions. I'll just reiterate that we are having our scoping comment period ending on September 13th, which is the following Friday. I know Evie has already submitted some comments. I'm sure others will on their way, but we are happy to receive those comments and try to incorporate them into our work. Liz, you're on mute.
Thank you for telling me that. I wanted to thank you for the presentation, and I had just a couple questions to clarify. You just said something about the industrial uses now are in a decline, so to speak, yet the city is investing millions in redeveloping the Brooklyn waterfront with industrial facilities. So how, on the one hand, Dutch Kills is being neglected, so to speak, and how does one get the focus back into Long Island City for those kinds of jobs that have been here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the city is definitely trying to be strategic about kind of stymieing that loss of industrial and then leveraging where they think there's great opportunity sites. I think there is some opportunity, especially with Reimagine Ravenswood, which is not to say that couldn't happen here. I think within our environmental analysis framework, we're trying to be conservative in what we think is a likely outcome. But part of our work is going to be trying to partner with the team over at the generating station to see how we can bring some more workforce development to this neighborhood.
Partnering with whom? What station did you say?
Sure, the Ravenswood generating station.
Oh, the generating station. Okay.
Right.
I thought you were talking about another city agency or something like that. I didn't put it together.
So many of us.
Okay. I'll come back later. Richard has his hand up with a question.
Yeah, how you doing, Colin? I hope you had a great summer. And I just got one quick question. You may want to go into this a little bit, particularly for some people if there's new people on this board. You discussed the fact that you were working to incorporate opportunity zones within this. That was part of what you said at the beginning when you talked about opportunity. From what I've read, they've not been that effective in actually creating opportunity. They've just been lining some pockets of some industrial investors in areas. Is it worth it to pursue that? Have you guys looked into whether opportunity zones themselves are something that should be encouraged? Because there's a lot of political feedback that they might be eliminated. If you could go into that a little bit, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. For the benefit of the whole board, I'll just explain industrial business zones, or IBZs, are a policy that started in about 2004, 2006.
I'm talking about opportunity zones now, not the industrial business zones.
I'm not familiar with opportunity zones.
Okay. All right. Okay, I thought it was mentioned in the beginning. Maybe I misread it, but I thought it was mentioned. Opportunity zones were basically established, I think, way back around Reagan's days when there was a financial they were given financial reasons to invest within areas they felt could create more jobs and things like that. There's basically the reason behind it, but it hasn't really been that successful over the years, and there's been discussions to eliminating them. I think if I look back at your slide, unless I read it wrong, one of the first things you said was something about opportunity zones. That's why I brought it up. Unless
Sorry,
totally,
I don't think I did, but I'll double confirm.
okay. Because it sounded like you were saying one of the reasons to do this was to encourage opportunity zones.
I think just generally we think there's good opportunity here without the capital O, capital Z.
Zones is just opportunity as a general sense is what you're
Right.
Zones of opportunity.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Evie, you,
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Colin. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question. You had one of the slides, I think one of the first slides, it kind of outlined the goals of this plan. And the first bullet was protect existing affordable housing, as well as kind of developing, additional affordable housing. So could you just talk about what existing affordable housing will be protected and how that's going to be done?
Sure. I'll just start off with that it will be a little bit outside of the purview of DCP, but we're working with a lot of our partner agencies. So part of our draft strategies, of course, is protecting existing affordable housing. And so we're working really closely with HPD to spread awareness about what resources they currently have and explore opportunities for expanding other programs that they might be interested in bringing to this neighborhood. So like, for example, I believe like in East New York, they saw there was a lot of folks losing the deed to their property through deed theft. And so as part of like the East New York plan, they rolled out a lot more materials to support homeowners so they wouldn't be losing their homes through deed theft. So like that's something that I'd be looking at here once we get to the culmination of the study.
So, okay, I guess I'm just trying to understand because I know no MIH has been built, right? So this would be rent stabilized. This would be
Sure, yeah.
like de facto affordable housing, a lot of like small family, homes provide, have rental, apartments that are generally much less expensive. Well, they are much less expensive than everything that has gone up. So there's going to be a concerted effort to protect those, or are they going to kind of get like I guess I would love a little more information on what the strategy is there.
Sure. Just as I would like to make the distinction that we have our study area and then we also have a context area, which is a little bit greater. It goes all the way up to 36th Avenue in Community District 1. And so within our study area itself, there's about 10 housing units within the entire study area. It's a lot of manufacturing uses. So when it comes to that kind of protection of those housing units, we are kind of focusing more in towards our greater context area. So I think we'll have a better answer for what those strategies are going to look like once we progress further in this plan. But I imagine it will be really relying on HPD resources and knowing your rights and those kind of information bears.
Okay. And then the slide that had kind of the description of what would happen with no action, with action 1, action 2. Is it possible for you to just pull that up? I had a question about
Yep.
about that. I'm just wondering if that factors in. Yeah, that's the slide. I think I see it highlighted. So does that factor in any kind of empty office to housing conversions?
I don't believe any conversions were analyzed under this. It's all based on new construction.
So it's all based on new construction. So there's no plan as part of this to convert any empty office space to housing.
There actually aren't really many opportunities within our study area specifically. And a lot of those conversion laws are only affect buildings that were built after, I believe, somewhere in the 1990s, which, given Long Island City's recent development, doesn't really make them eligible.
You built lots since the 90s.
Right.
There's been a lot of office space built since the 90s, though. No? Okay, but
Sorry,
maybe
I meant
outside of
that
this area. Yeah.
if it was built before 1990, it would be eligible.
Right. And is City of Just changing that?
They changed it from somewhere in the 80s and they bumped it up a decade.
Okay, thank you.
So does that make the Board of Ed building eligible to be converted?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with this building.
It's right next to the big one next to the JetBlue building.
Oh, okay. It might
right.
be.
Around Queens Plaza.
Right, yeah, Queens Plaza North and 28th Street. Do you know if that's part of the analysis to look into what that can be done there?
It's outside of our study area, so we won't be analyzing it
Okay.
environmental. Yeah.
Okay. Jeffrey, Jeff?
Hi, sorry, I lost my buttons.
Okay.
Okay. One of the questions was about the Department of Education building. So I guess we already just talked through that. Second question, how, and this is kind of tied in, how will this impact the Terracotta building on Vernon Boulevard, just north of the Con Ed site? I see it's within that, I think that MX district that you showed. So what type of development will that spur around there? I don't know the property ownership of that particular lot. So just curious as to the impacts to that lot and that building particularly.
Sure. So it is a landmarked building. So I do believe it has some certain protections from demolishing it. And I'll also just note that it's in our study area, just to create a holistic shape. But the district already applied to it. That was rezoned about 10 years ago. We believe to be pretty appropriate. It's an M15R10. That is a very high district. I don't think we have any intention of increasing the density there. So in terms of the analysis for environmental review, that is already an action that has occurred. So it's not a new action that we would be analyzing.
You're muted.
That's
Okay.
it for me. Yeah.
Oh, are you done, Jeffrey?
I'm done. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. He's really cute. How old is the boy? That's a boy. She,
This
I'm
is a
sorry.
girl actually. Yeah. Ella.
Oh, I'm
She's like 16 months. Right? Yeah.
Good baby.
Sorry, you caught me right out at right. She's heading to bed right now. So sorry about that. You caught me
That's
right
why
there. I
she's
was
quiet.
yeah.
Okay, Amy.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I wanted to go back to the two lots on Queens Plaza North, the two M13 and M15. So what's the plan there? Those will be, I mean, right now they're empty lots, right?
Along Queens Plaza North.
North, yeah.
Yeah, one of
That's
them
the
is
only, those are the only ones in our district that we're to be looking at, right?
sure. Let me pull it up again just so we all are
Thanks.
looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay, so this block here is currently fully vacant. There are some buildings on this lot, and the rest of these are moderately built out, but not entirely.
And it goes beyond 40th Avenue. It's like half a block or like a third of, just a little bit beyond 40th Avenue, it looks like.
That's right, about halfway.
And so those blocks have buildings on them right now. I'm
Some of
trying
them
to
do.
remember. Okay. And so what's the idea for these? They will be mixed use with no residential except for the R10.
That's right.
Okay, all right. So nothing on the M14A or the M15A.
We do expect some redevelopment, but just not residential.
Okay, thanks.
Is that because it's in the IBZ?
That's right.
Okay, so it precludes residential development. So at the meeting that you first introduced this concept, I asked you about the relationship to the Long Island City Core Study, which was sort of dropped. Well, let's say put on the shelf in 2017, 2018. And what was proposed for that was an M1 or MX and an R73, which, what would be the R73? What would be the FAR? I don't have my book here. Yes, I do. An R73, it would be 3.44.
I need to get one of your books.
Oh, I do. I refer to it quite often, and I refer to the older one, which I can see because the other one is printed in a light ink. It's very difficult to read and it's tiny. But anyway, yeah, it's a much more obviously contextual district. And I know it has to be, but fact of the matter is that it was proposed back in 2017. And why have you gone from a medium sort of height and density to the sky's the limit? Especially since the city of Yes has increased it even more.
Yeah, that's, I think, a really fair question. I think in those handful of years, or 6 or 7 years, the agency has a little different look on housing, and we're trying, and density generally. I think it's something that we're trying to be really bullish with, especially sites that we see right next to transit, near central business districts like Long Island City, and access to really wide streets like 21st Street or Queens Plaza South or North. So those are some of the rationale for that higher district. But yeah, if the committee thinks that a lower district is more appropriate, I think a comment reflecting that would be, really appropriate.
Okay, so it's a little game we have. You're doing the high density, we're asking for the lower density, and you're going to get in the middle. Is that what we're doing here? When it comes to talking about what's appropriate, I mean, the question is, what is appropriate there? Do we want something that looks like the other side of the plaza? I don't think so. Where you can't see anything except lines and lines, vertical lines of buildings, you see nothing else. I'm not sure that the community wants something like that. So, we have to do our work in finding out what it is that they want. But are you going to be doing anything in the Dutch Kills area with respect to soliciting community comment before it's certified?
So we've done a lot. We were at Family Day actually about a month ago or 2 weeks ago. Time is a little weird. So we've done a lot of engaging with the folks in NYCHA over there in Queensbridge houses. Outside of that, we also have been doing a lot of blast emails from the folks who have joined our meetings to get the word out.
Do they understand what this is going to bring into the community? The physical context that's going to be created there? Because we're talking about 6- and 7-story buildings across the street from something that's going to be above 30 at least.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to someone's understanding of our conversations. We are trying to convey that we're mapping our highest density districts when it comes to an R10.
Okay. And what about the community in Dutch Kills, the Civic Association?
They're a group I don't think we've been able to have a lot of contact with. If you have a person that we can reach out to, I'd love to get in contact.
Okay, I think that can be arranged. And I think it should be arranged. I'd like to see a presentation made to the Civic Association so you can get a context of what's coming, from that area where the actual construction is going on at this point. They've been living with the new development there. So, okay. All right, Jeff, do you still have a question, or is that hand up from before? Probably from before.
Yeah, that's from before. Sorry, let me take it down. There you
All
go.
right. Andreas, do you have any comment to make?
No, nothing. I think we got a good coverage from everybody.
Okay.
I got one quick question, if I could, Colin. How is this going to affect all the hotels that are built? I know it's more difficult to put them up now because of the permit requirements, but there's an extensive amount of hotel that have been built all through this area. And how does that fit into your vision?
Yeah, well, in terms of new developments, hotels are still required to provide a special permit, so we won't be changing anything like that. The future use of those hotels could change. Can't make that promise. But yeah, I don't think, maybe I'm not fully understanding your question.
It's just what you project in the future. You're putting together a vision right now. This is what this is all about. So within that vision, where do you see existing or proposed hotels? And one of the reasons originally that the hotels went in was because they viewed this area as an extension of Midtown Manhattan, where there's a lot of hotels, and they wanted to include that. Is this going to be, is it a continued vision? And are we going to, even with special permits, are they still going to, promote or hotels and things like that and have more of them?
I don't think part of our vision is really to expand the hotel industry within Long Island City. I also think that there's a lot of pressure on hotels to not really expand in this district, given how poorly they are received generally. So, that's certainly not in our intention.
So,
Okay.
so the scenario I can see here with respect to the hotels that are there in Long Island City, there's no impediment to them converting. Is that what you're saying at this point? They can convert with a special permit from hotel to residential.
The special permit is to create a hotel.
Okay.
All new
So they don't
hotels.
need that anymore. Absolutely right. Okay. So if they want to convert, so they would have the opportunity to convert to either regular apartments or just simply convert to SROs, because that's what you're encouraging at this point with the ZHO. Is that correct?
My understanding of where majority of hotels are located are still within M districts, so that would restrict any residential uses. I know it's kind of a fine line between hotel and residential. The zoning resolution does make a distinction, but through these actions, it wouldn't be encouraging those conversions.
Okay. You said the majority are in the IBZ? Is that what you said?
From my understanding, yeah, the ones I can think of right now.
Okay. All right. So the next step is, I guess,
Oh, Liz, I'm sorry. I had a,
sorry, I didn't look up.
that's okay. That's okay. Colin, can you just go back to the map with the focus on those two? Yeah. So I guess, and Liz kind of did bring this up, but I don't feel like we really got a clear answer because it is right next to Queensbridge houses. And so when you look at number 2, and you said we talked about, and you said, well, we went to Family Day and we talked about, what the zoning was going to be. Did you say like this could be 35 stories or even up to 70 stories, right? Like what is there, like I guess I just I have, people I know also do outreach within that community as well, or a part of that community as well. And I'm just wondering just how clear it is what the impact is going to be. So when you did your Family Days, like a model, here's like the possible scenario, here's what it's going to look like. Or is it just like, it's going to be R10? Like, I think that's kind of an abstract type of thing.
Yeah, most of our engagement with NYCHA folks really weren't focusing on the build context or what could be built. I think a lot of their comments actually had to deal with social services and quality of life issues, be that safety or access to parking. So the majority of our conversations have been trying to find solutions to serving those needs. So I can't really speak to the reaction to density. Most of our conversations didn't skew that way.
But do you see how that might be something that's important to share with people? Especially since, because, and I'll just take it a step further here, and you know, when you're looking at the MIH that might be mapped, it's the average, you know, NYCHA income is approximately between $22,000 and $25,000 a year, right? So even with MIH being mapped, it doesn't mean that any of those units are people are going to qualify for those, right? So I think that is important because people feel like what's being built is not being built for them. And so, you know, I think, and if you're talking about something that is going to be significantly up, you know, a mostly luxury tower next to, you know, a NYCHA development, you know, I think that really needs to be considered.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from and that point of view. And I certainly think that it's something worth considering in comments. I guess I didn't mean to say that we were not discussing it with the folks at NYCHA. It's just that their main complaints were centered around quality of life and social services.
That I understand. I'm just, but this is about a rezoning, right? So I think it's important for people to understand the impact of a rezoning. I mean, yes, there hopefully will be some community benefits. I don't know what the guarantees are going to be for that, but again, it's, you know, I think it's something that's important for people to know. Like, what is the, you know, because you talked about also wanting to look at the surrounding context, right? That was also on one of the slides as well, you know, from city planning. So I feel like, you know, it's like the stuff is out there. Yes, we're going to do this, but when you actually kind of break it down and look at it, you got to look at who's going to be benefiting the most from this. And then what is the surrounding context? Are we really looking at the surrounding context here and really having transparent conversations about what the impact is going to be? So.
Yeah, if I may interrupt at this point, I think, you know, because most of the zoning actions are occurring in District 2, that's where the emphasis of outreach, I think, has been, and on the fringe, you know, the involvement of the NYCHA, the Queensbridge NYCHA Association. I think city planning in this study has to really take a good look at these 4 blocks. It's a small area, but it has to be treated differently from the way District 2 has been developed and you know, and the proposals that you're doing down in District 2. I haven't looked at them. I don't know how high you're going, what you're doing down in there. You know, my emphasis was on what was happening in our district. And I'm concerned that we're not getting feedback from Dutch Kills where the development is occurring. And I don't know, as Evie said, I don't know if the residents of Queensbridge understand the type of development that is coming. They see the opportunity for MIH housing coming in, lower income housing, but as Evie said, it's not, you know, the eligibility is not coming with it. It's not guaranteed to come with it. So, and also the percentages are low. They're still doing the ZHO, right? So when is that happening? When is that coming to, you know, adoption?
Mhm.
The question regarding CHO.
Yeah, what's happening with that? When does that go
Sure.
into effect?
Yeah, well, it's all, of course, based on city council vote, which we're expecting to occur sometime in November or December. So from there, we're expecting by end of year to have CHO adopted if it is voted on in favorably.
Do we have hearing dates on that with the council yet? Have you received anything about that?
I haven't yet. We're still supposed to have a CPC hearing scheduled, or it hasn't been on the calendar yet, but it should be in the coming weeks.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I guess I'm jumping the gun at this point with respect to the council. I thought, okay. No, that was the hearing for the DEIS for, okay. So, yeah, I think this warrants a reassessment by city planning and an active outreach with us for this section of the proposal. You may think it's only 4.5 blocks, but it like everything else that has happened in this district, it sets a precedent for what other new development is going. And Ravenswood, just north of this area, has experienced that. I mean, this is why we don't want a neighborhood zoning, because when you have a neighborhood zoning, you go for the max and it doesn't look like the neighborhood anymore. It's not acceptable. And that in Ravenswood was parcel by parcel, even though we asked for a review, a framework, and we finally got a framework. And I guess we've been going by it, going along with that to some extent. But it's calmed down lately. So now, I'd like to put in that request to city planning to start talking with us about what's happening and with the local communities there so that we know what's going on also.
Yeah, I think we'd be happy to take you up on that request. And if there's any other groups that come to mind after this meeting that you'd like us to reach out to, feel free to drop us a line.
Well, I don't know if there's a business group over, if the IBZ has something or other, that has membership of the people who own those buildings there. I don't know if there's any kind of organization. You would have that information more than I would. We don't know what type of industries are there. That's not information that comes very easy. Okay, so if you bring that message back, I think there's somewhat agreement here that what you're proposing is really out of character or out of, just incredible. Incredibly dense. Understood, it's right next to the transit hub. But doesn't necessarily mean it has to be just what you're proposing. So that would be good if you bring that message back. I did one other thing you talked about was the open space assessments that you were working on and trying to improve that. Are you talking about just open space within those 4 blocks in our area? I don't know about District 2, but you were saying that waterfront access is really the focus. But I think what the community needs, especially when you get in the Dutch Kills area, is open space for, between 21st and 31st Street. Going up to 36th Avenue. This is outside of your study area, yes, but it's a focus I think that we as a community board also have to look at, but there may be city-owned parcels there that can be redeveloped. I don't have access to that information. I mean, we have, what is it, the 3rd or 4th lowest access to open space in the city. So that's another big issue.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just state that like what I meant in terms of production of open space, the waterfront access plan is our strongest zoning tool that we have to mandate and encourage that development of publicly accessible open space. Of course, through the study, we're also working with parks to kind of fill those walk to park gaps and find other ways to get creative about producing more open spaces. And that's something that we can also explore in our special district text. So something that we're going to be looking at a lot more as we further develop this plan in the next 6 months or so.
Well, I think the plan, what you can include is a mandatory open space provision of, open space in these areas, especially since it is part of a special district. No, it's outside the special district. Is
Part
it?
of our actions would be to expand the special district.
Oh, you're expanding the Dutch Kills Special District?
It would be the greater Long Island City Special District, and we haven't determined what sub areas would be expanded or if it'd be a new sub area. The mechanics of it are still TBD.
Huh, okay, surprise. All right. Richard, did you have another question?
Oh, just a quick question. The Ravenswood Rising, that's in conjunction with Rise, obviously, the people that are taking over the power plant there. Is the focus of that, was it really about City of Yes and the rezonings, or was it more about, the NYCHA residents actually benefiting from the changes that they're proposing within the power plant? I always got the impression that's more what that was about, and that you really weren't getting into the City of Yes stuff. That's a whole separate animal. So when you did mention it, I was quite surprised, actually, that, when you talked about a meeting for that area. And so everybody's right, we haven't had a meeting like that. And I think it is appropriate, with whatever civic association is down there. So, and the other thing, of course, with Liz, I know it's so hard to look at the possibility of a 40 or 50-story building going up there. And I also know that you are balancing on a razor's edge because of its proximity to transport, which is so important. So I do hope that you figure out ways, in fact, with these meetings, that NYCHA residents can, in fact, benefit from any structures that go up there in terms of employment and opportunities, and make sure we do everything we can to make sure it helps the economic condition down there for everybody.
Well, I think that, yes, but those are commitments that have to come dictated from the council, not with,
But we can make, we as a community
can make the recommendation.
can still
Right.
make recommendations.
Right.
This is our
We
job.
can, we do, we make recommendations about, the type of the income levels and all that. But the real teeth to getting this done comes from the council. And as long as it doesn't exceed the scope of the project that went through the environmental statement, they can get it. That's the whole thing. If for instance, I don't see any reason why, unless there's a legal reason, there can't be a mandate within the zoning that the percentages increase. I'm not sure. When you have such large buildings, when you have a 70-story building or 67-story building, and you only get 20% for affordable, that's really, that's selfish. I can't think of any other horrible word to call it. It just deprives the community of any benefit. And I just, and that has to come from the legislators. Although the zoning can be written, it has to be demanded by the legislators. But
the other thing that we can hope for, and I'm sorry for interjecting here, is it seems that the federal government is already wanting to get more involved in housing. It's all of a sudden become a big campaign thing. And what they can do right off immediately with HUD is change these area median incomes. Right there, you wouldn't have to change anything here unless they just were able to shrink the districts where it's all defined, so that these MIHs actually face, are giving numbers more to reality. And I'm hoping that's something that does happen. I know that's beyond the scope of what we're doing, but that could be a huge change. And I do hope that it would be great if we could reach out to the federal government and tell them that's something we need to see. Because that's another way of reducing the real numbers for rent.
Well, the land use committee and also the community board has every right to write a letter to any representative with these issues. And it's encouraged. It's done on a monthly basis on many topics by other community boards in the city.
Why bring it up? Yep.
Absolutely. And I think that, this is an opportunity where we can start making our voices heard. And, we should go on record, with all specifically, going from the local council all the way up to the federal, Mr. Schumer, if we have to. So it should be done, we should be more outspoken on what we need and not just carbon copies of our reports or our recommendations to city planning, but an actual letter to what they can possibly be doing for us, asking them what they can be doing for us. So, I look forward, when we have our meetings as we go along, and we bring this topic up for discussion, that these things that you're talking about get included in the letter. I've tried to put as much as you say and the comments into the reports and the letters that go to city planning, but, we could get more topic specific. I think that might help. So anyway,
Liz, I just have a quick question because I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So what's different with this is the DCP led rezoning than like a private ULURP, is that things can be written into the language can be put in there to mandate a higher percentage of affordable housing of MIH. That's what you're saying?
Well,
I just want to make sure I understand it correctly.
I think it's a cooperation between it's an HPD thing. They have jurisdiction, don't they? Colin?
Over MIH.
Yeah.
It's a city planning initiative, so I think they administer it in terms of like housing folks once something is developed, but MIH is actually administered by DCP in terms of the zoning.
It's administered by DCP.
No.
Might be the wrong verb. I mean to say that, it's written in our zoning resolution, and we're like the stewards of that resolution.
Okay.
So all of the things like improvements to infrastructure, schools, all that stuff will be part of those commitments will be written into the legislation.
There's two prongs that we're working to simultaneously. So one is our zoning resolution changes. So like that's what's going to go through ULURP. But at the same time that it's being considered by the city council, there'll be a point of agreements or a POA. So that includes investments the city intends to make alongside this.
So it's what the city's going to make. Okay. And we won't really know what those are until, are we going to know what those are before we actually vote on the?
Well, we already voted on it. I think we already voted on it, right?
No, we didn't. No, this hasn't gone through ULURP yet. I'm talking about this neighborhood rezoning.
This neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Abby, to answer your question, I'm not entirely sure because from what I understand, it's generally a negotiation between the council member and the mayor. So I'll have to double check to see how involved the council member usually includes community boards and other civics.
I guess my question is when it comes time, right, once this starts to go through ULURP and we have to kind of give our recommendation as a community board, are we going to know what those commitments are from the city? Or is it just going to be like, we're going to improve infrastructure? I mean, are we going to have like real like commitments and numbers and that kind of stuff? I guess that's my That's my question.
Yeah, just to say again, like that is very much kind of determined very close to the end of the process. Likely, I don't hedge your bets on it, but likely after a CB vote.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, what's next now? So when do you think you're coming back to us with this study? When do you anticipate having something to start reviewing? You said November, the end of the year would be certification, but would you be sharing a draft of the application prior to that?
So we're actually planning to certify in March or April of next year, still TBD since we're about 6 months out or so. I'll have to get back to you on a plan for touch points with the community board on that application. We're still very much in the early stages of drafting that part up a bit.
Okay.
But I'll certainly be getting back to you about our engagement series that we're working to roll out for the fall and winter.
Yes, so to get them to understand before the application is actually put together? Is that, or are you waiting until that time?
So our fall engagement is intended to kind of help shape some aspects of the plan that we haven't focused too much on yet to date, outside of just those typical zoning districts. So that might be more about how we use our public sites or how we envision the waterfront to look like and our open spaces. So we're kind of hoping to use that information to help kind of craft what our zoning proposal looks like.
So that's going to be done during the winter time. That's when you'll be outreaching.
That's
for
correct.
those-
I'll have a more robust kind of layout of what that engagement is looking like in the future.
Okay. All right. So next month, when you come back for your report, you can maybe have a little bit more information.
That's the hope.
That's good. Okay. I want to transition now to that. You saw on the agenda that DCP report or update was on there, and I thought this would give I wanted to do that on a monthly basis to give Colin or whoever is going to represent that evening an opportunity to tell us what is going on at city planning, in addition to updating us on the ULURPs that are coming through and have been filed. So if you would like to go on to that at this point.
Sure.
Colin?
Yeah. First about citywides or applications. I might have missed the order.
Well, I think, let's see. We had some new filings. Isn't that correct? New
Yes.
applications were filed.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I'll start there. Yeah. Just as a reminder about how some of our, one second. So any application that we have that's in public review is accessible via our zoning application portal or ZAP.
Mhm.
I'm just going to pull it all up. So if on your own time you want to look into this, you can find projects that are currently up for review. So just to give you a look at how I filtered out for applications in Community District 1, under project status, anything that is filed, noticed, or in public review, for example, are things that are falling under those categories, as opposed to completed. Those are the things that are all visible on ZAP. And if you toggle on the community district toggle here, you can search for Queens 1, and you'll see all those projects that are publicly visible. So, for example, 21st Street rezoning is something that we had discussed or was referred to the public in the spring of last year. So is that 12th Street rezoning? If we get out those ones that are in public review, those are ones you've already seen. We see other things that are coming down the pipeline. Once something is filed, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be up for referral next month. there still can be revisions to that application, be that through environmental review or just their regular land use application. So typically I'll give Florence a heads up if we're expecting something in the following month or so to be referred out. I'll say on the horizon, you can expect probably this Vernon Boulevard Broadway special permit renewal to be coming along. This was a project that was approved, I believe, in 2019, 2020. I might be getting my year wrong. And it had a special permit associated with it. That permit has expired, and the applicant is looking to renew it. I will defer to them to give you kind of more background on that project. So some other things that we're looking at is 3301 11th Street rezoning. Liz called that out before when we were talking about Ravenswood and that framework. This is another rezoning under that same framework. So I'm happy to talk more about that once we get closer to certification. But yeah, please use this site if you want to get like a heads up on what's coming down into the pipeline. And Liz, you can tell me if there's a certain product you want me to talk more about.
Well, I think I had asked you at the meeting about what was happening with the senior development, that we get questions about that also. The the one on Broadway and 31st Street.
Right.
The senior residents.
Right. So the ICOS project, IKOS, it is an HPD-led project. From what I heard, they're planning to present to the commission or to the board, excuse me, in October. Though I don't anticipate them to certify until a couple of months later, be that like end of year or early next. But I heard that they are planning to give you a touch point on where they are with the application.
So they haven't filed yet?
They have not filed, or else it would be present on ZAP.
Okay. And the other thing was there were rumblings in the community about the LaGuardia Shopping Center on Ditmars and 45th Street. Could you just talk about that at this point? What's happening?
Sure. Since this is not a filed application yet, since it's still in the draft stages, I won't really be sharing too much information about it since it's under the purview of the applicant. But it's still a project that is being actively worked on, but we haven't gotten to that filed stage yet.
Have there been adjustments? Have there been changes?
There could be changes under CHO, but that's still TBD as that is to get adopted.
Okay. All right. And no indication, there's no indication that they will be they're just waiting until after the ZHO is passed. Is that what they're doing at this point?
I really wouldn't want to speak for the applicant.
All right. Richard, did you have a question?
No questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
I do have one other citywide update I just want to preface you all on. And I'll have a more robust presentation that I can give post announcement, but we're planning to roll out for a city council legislation, a industrial action plan, which is intended to look at industrial districts as well as industrial uses across our city, and create an action plan for the future growth, development, land use changes related to that. So that is to be formally kicked off in mid-September, though we've been doing some light stakeholder engagement on that front already to get the word out. But something to expect in the future. Community District 1 has a lot of manufacturing uses in it, so I think it'll be really poignant to be talking about at these meetings.
Do you know the areas they're looking at in this district?
It's a citywide project, so we'll be looking at all districts.
All
I feel
M
like
zones, all M zone districts?
it's not exactly specific to M zones, though that's definitely a focus of it. It's just it's more focused on use. So if the land use itself is industrial, even like per se in Ravenswood, R5 district, warehouses everywhere, we would be looking at that as well.
Oh, so you're looking at pre-61 uses in addition to, okay.
They're still currently existing.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. This was an extended effort on your part. I have to applaud the amount of time you had us. Okay. The only other, thank you very much for your
Yeah, thank you.
contribution tonight. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was the capital and expense budget items for 25, 26, 2025, 26. Are there any new items we want to put on here? The only thing we had was last year when we talked about the the waterfront access to Leicester Creek. Now, I'm not sure that comes under land use and zoning's jurisdiction at this point, to get the thing implemented. We can help, navigate the way, the studio at the time they came through Euler had offered to help. And, I think it was more by way of organizing and reaching out to other city agencies, coordinating it. But the board has to get its act together. It's not the zoning committee at this point, the land use and zoning committee, as much as it is the whole board has to put an emphasis on this. And, I don't know what to do. Do we establish some kind of steering committee or ad hoc committee to work on this to see what has to be done and outreach to the other committees? I guess maybe Andreas and Evie and I have to talk about what to do, or unless members of this committee have an idea on how to approach this. It's something worthwhile to do.
I think that I know that, number one, I think it's a DOT subject more than anything else initially, and then parks may have also an aspect to it. But I know that at one point, speaking to somebody at the studio, they basically said they couldn't do anything specific there because it wasn't their land. And that's what they use. But they said they would, like, as you said, try and do what they could to help facilitate any movement. So what that means, I'm not sure. But this is when it was brought up with one of our personal meetings with the OANA. That is what was said.
I think it would be good to maybe sit down with our council member and talk about it as well. So maybe we can request a meeting. Because there's definitely community interest in improving that area for public access, restoration, ecology, all that, right? So I think, it could be a real asset to the community. And we should try and push for that. So maybe Florence can reach out to our council member and request a meeting to talk about that area and how we can work together with her and with, figure out what it is that we need to do to make that happen.
Yeah, we need a strategy on how we're gonna respond to it also.
Yeah.
So, it just can't be you, me, and Richard and Andreas, idea. We have to really have a strategy. But you're right about the DOT part. That's another committee. It's a multi-committee approach, really. So, okay. So, I mean, that's the only thing that I could, at this
Well,
point.
I have something actually that we brought up in the past. I think is very important. It's under the expense budget, not under the capital budget.
Right.
And
Well,
this,
that's what this is too. This is really to look at what can be done in the area.
okay.
DOT. This would be, this would be DOT and parks, I think.
Maybe, I'm not sure yet. Anyways, yeah, probably parks.
Okay.
But one thing I
what
think
we're
that
saying-
what we had talked about, and this is what we've done in the past, and this goes, and if Colin's still on, he can hear this, is we actually requested that additional funding be given to DCP in order to properly staff themselves to do some of the more holistic projects we've been asking to do, like the Ravenswood area, all the area that was not rezoned between Ravenswood and the Astoria rezoning in 2010. So what the excuse has always been from DCP that they didn't have the staff to do it. That's all we ever heard. Well, you know what? We should request that they have the staff. So I think that's a very important one. That's what I would say we should put up there on the list.
I think we need to advocate for more funding for deeply affordable housing. I think like I feel like that's really, really important. Because this is what we need. There's limited funds. There was an increase in some funding. There should be more, right? Like we actually signed on to a letter to that the controller was, that effort that he was leading, Homes for the Generation. I can't remember exactly what it was called. We did that, I think, in May or June. But so I don't know what efforts are going to take place in this, upcoming budget cycle. But I do think that actual funds, allocation of the city budget, more of it for affordable housing, for deeply affordable housing, I think is super critical.
That should not just on our capital and expense budget priorities, but again, that should go to the federal government. They're talking about putting billions of dollars in the pipeline for housing. So we need to.
For sure. For sure. We're talking about like the city budget right now. So yeah, I agree with you, Richard.
Okay. So, any other thoughts?
So that was the only thing that we had on was Leicester Creek.
Yeah.
Didn't have the expense about.
I know Amy was looking at like organizing a spreadsheet and stuff. Are you still on, Amy?
And I think
I
that
am. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's been a busy summer and I didn't get the sheet out. And then I understand that there's also the 26. I'm just trying to like compare and contrast what we need to be doing. I mean, I can send what I did was I took the capital and expense. I kind of categorize them based on the different committees so that we can look at committee by committee capital and expense and comments from reviews that have been already done. So whether we need to remove certain items, put new items on, or just keep the list as is. There's a lot of shaking out of all those things to do. So yeah, I mean, I can try and send those out tonight. But Evie, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about it.
okay.
We can chat after the meeting if you have.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. I don't have anything else on the agenda. No minutes. You'll get them next month. So, anyone else have something to bring up? If not, what was that? 7:57? I guess the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Colin.
Thank you, guys.
I think.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. It's good to see you all again. It really
Good
is.
to see everyone. Absolutely.
Good to see everyone.
Okay.
Beginning of another journey.
God, another